Hi, this is Esther with Discover Your Origins. This is another Research with Me video. I'm going to be working on James Edwin Harman and looking at his spouses. So he was married twice. And so we're going to take a look at them, clean up their profiles on FamilySearch, look for any missing information. Also update my ancestry tree at the same time. You can see I'm still working on building those out. And let's scroll down and take a look at what FamilySearch has. Now, James was married twice, first to Hulda and then to Polly. One thing about FamilySearch is FamilySearch will list the spouses in order by marriage date. If a couple does not have a marriage date, they're listed at the bottom, even if they were probably married first. And that's the case here. Hulda and James were married first, and you can figure that out by looking at the births of the children of that couple. So they had their first child in 1879 and a second one in 1882. And then there is a marriage date for Polly, which is in 1889. So we're missing a marriage date, and it would be kind of nice to figure out or see if we can find a marriage date for them. It may be difficult. South Carolina in this time period, any marriage dates would come from church records. And so that's where you have to look, and those are a little bit hard to find online. Also, this family, you got to know which church they belong to. And the Langfords were Baptists, but some of the descendants became Lutheran. And so you've got to look in both churches in Lexington County to see if you can find a marriage record. Possibly there's a Bible, family Bible, that would have it, but hard to say. You could probably estimate the marriage year to be about 1878 because the daughters were in 1879, but again, we don't know for sure. So anyway, we're going to start with Hulda, and we've got a middle name here, Hulda Emeline Taylor. So we're going to look and see if there's evidence for that. And I only have a birth year here, probably from a census. So we're going to click forward and look at Hulda Emeline Taylor. So on FamilySearch, we've got complete birth and death dates. We're missing a burial. And she is connected to parents David Taylor and Elizabeth Schumpert, if that's how it's pronounced. Okay, so we've got 2 records already attached on my ancestry tree with 4 additional record hints. And so I'm going to look at that. FamilySearch has some additional record hints. There's a Find a Grave here, which we've got a Hulda Emeline Taylor Harman, which is probably our person. And here it is as well on Ancestry. So go ahead and attach that and update my ancestry tree. And I don't add the parents of the spouse unless they are somehow related to the family that I'm working on, the Langfords in particular. So if they had Langford last names, then I would probably look at them a little bit closer, but they don't. One thing about Find a Grave is we might actually look and see, okay, there's not a photograph included, so these dates are probably questionable. Let's go and look at Find a Grave and see. All right, so there's not a photo, and I can actually do a photo request. This says there's an inscription that says wife of Edward Harman, daughter of Elizabeth and David and Elizabeth Taylor, married February 24th. Doesn't have a year, but I would probably guess 1879 or possibly 1878. So if you've never done a photo request on Find a Grave, it's pretty simple. So we'll just do request photo. Oh, there's 45 volunteers for this cemetery that are willing to go and look. This says, please include any plot or location information you have for this grave and any other notes for the volunteers. There's no plot information. All right, so if we can learn a little bit more about this cemetery, St. James Lutheran Church Cemetery, that will help. All right, so we've got 469 memorials. There's some nearby cemeteries. few pictures of the cemetery. It doesn't look like it's terribly big. Sometimes you can actually Google the church and see what it says. So I'm going to do that. I may not show it on camera here depending on what the search results are, but we'll see. Stay tuned. Okay, so I'm back. So I couldn't find a Facebook page or website for the church. So all I have here is an address. And so I can go to Google Maps and see if I can find them on a map. Okay. So there's the map of the church. Sometimes there'll be a website listing. So there's St. James Lutheran Church. So there's not a website listing through Google Maps. So there is a phone number. So you could try calling them and asking them about the cemetery next to the church. So that is an option. But we're kind of limited right now. So another thing that you can do is actually do a Google Street View and actually look and see if you can see how big this cemetery is. Oh, this is interesting. Here's a sign that says the church had been founded in 1873. So, all right. So there's the cemetery. But there's a little playground in front of it. I don't know if it will let you. Yeah, Google didn't go into the cemetery, but not a big cemetery. So it may not be a. It looks like there's some gravestones on the back side. Let's go around the corner and look. Okay, so it's not a big cemetery. So it's a little bit of an ask, but it's not a huge ask. So the bigger the cemetery, the harder it is for people to locate gravestones, but it's not a big one. And so I think it's not going to be too terrible for someone to find that headstone. All right, so we're doing a photo request. So we'll do a photo request. There are 45 volunteers for this cemetery, so hopefully someone will be willing to go and look for this. So we'll just send the request and we'll just see what happens. I haven't been super successful with photo requests. Some have been a little disappointing, but you just never know. So it's worth a try. Okay, so interesting that we've got photos of her parents. So I'm hoping that she's next to one of her parents. That would be really helpful. Okay, so let's go ahead and attach this Find a Grave Memorial to her on FamilySearch. All right, so there we go. All right, next we've got an 1870 census. So let's review that. All right, so she's still living at home. She's 24 years old. Let's just take a look at this. Okay, there's HE, so that would be Hulda, 24. We've got her father and probably her mother. So she didn't marry until after she was 24 years old. So that's interesting. They're living next door to some Taylors, and then there's another Taylor family. We will add this as well. There's this date right here, September. Let's look at that column. If you were born within the year, state the month, January, February. Okay, so here's another example where the enumerator did not follow the instructions. So they were supposed to add the month if a person had been born within the last year. So in other words, 1879, but they didn't. And so you can see here they've got the birthplace is Lexington instead of the state or country. And then they put the birth month of everybody, which is great. And also look at they put if married within the year, state the month. So that's interesting. Okay, so we know that she's born in Lexington, and this says her birth is September. So let's just look and see what we've got for her birth date. We've got May. So a little bit of a conflict there. Yeah, September. And her parents look like they were born in January. All right. Let's go ahead and attach that. All right, so then we've got a couple of other censuses here. We've got the 1850 and the 1860, and she wasn't married by 1870, so she was married between 1870 and 1879. That we can estimate that. All right, I'm not going to take the time right now to look at these census records. I'll just get them attached. Oh, yeah, she was born in Lexington, so let's add that. Okay, so there's records. Okay, there's a hint here for possible marriage records. That can be really hit or miss. And we would want South Carolina marriage records. So let's just save ourselves some time and see. Okay, here's a South Carolina marriage index. Doesn't look like it. So we could keep looking, but as I've said, South Carolina can be a little tricky on finding marriage records. At least so far in my experience. All right. Oh, here's that 1870 census, so I'll attach that later to FamilySearch. And then there's this new Social Security numerical identification file for James D. Harman. So that's her child with birth and okay. We will look at that when we look at her son. So I'm just going to leave those hanging out for right now. All right, so we were able to add her burial place and just verify most all the information. Now, she might have died in Summit, probably most likely in Lexington. Let's add her Lexington County birth location to FamilySearch. Okay. All right. It's probably not worth adding the estimated marriage year 1870, 1879. That is just something to take note for looking for possible marriage records. Doesn't really add a whole lot of useful information. All right, we'll come back and look at these children later. So right now, we're going to go back to James and look at his second spouse, Polly. Polly is usually a nickname, and it could have been her actual given name. Hard to say. Now I have 11 record hints on Ancestry, and it looks like she's already got 14 with a couple of collaboration notes attached. We've got complete birth and death dates. We've got the burial information. And since they were buried at the Lutheran church, you could probably guess that they were Lutheran. So, all right. Let's scroll down. She was married twice. So James dies in 1910. It looks like she remarries in 1911 to Simeon. height, and they didn't have children together. And then her parents are Elijah Wingard and Carolyn Gable, and that's what Ancestry is hinting for me. So I'm just going to look really quick so we don't take up too much time. It looks like there's an obituary. We've got a census record, death record, find a grave, stories and events. I don't have a newspapers.com subscription, so I can't look at that one right now. And 1900. Okay. And the 1900 census gives an estimated marriage year. It says about 1890, which seems to jive. I'm curious to see what their marriage record evidence is. Okay. Look at the obituaries. Okay, so this is obituary for Polly. Let's look and see it. If we can find if it gives any more detailed information. Here we go. Mrs. Height dies. Okay, she was born near Lexington, 15th of December, 1860. Gives her parents' names. She is survived by one brother. All right, so nothing about her first marriage. All right. Unlikely to have anything. Let's look at her find a grave memorial. And she's buried in that same cemetery. Okay, Polly Wingard Harman Height. There's her birth and death dates. But that is it. Okay. So we don't have any evidence for this marriage date. And there's no sources attached. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish up Polly off camera and finish cleaning her up on my ancestry tree, and then work on the children of Hulda and James. And then next time we'll move on to the next child of John Harman and Martha Langford. And you'll notice here that after James, there's another daughter named Nancy Rebecca, but there are two Nancy Rebeccas. So I want to look at that pretty closely. I suspect that one of them is not actually a daughter, and it may be attached incorrectly on FamilySearch. So stay tuned for that. I hope it was helpful seeing how to do a photo request on Find a Grave. It can be a useful tool to help build evidence on your ancestor. So until next time, we'll see you later.